Hi, and welcome to this month's The Mortgage Broker broadcast. My guest this month is Steve Humphrey from The Mortgage Pod, and I wanted to get Steve onto the podcast. He's had his own business, The Mortgage Pod, now for a few years. He's had the transition from into the industry as a mortgage broker in the large corporate estate agency mortgage services. And then sort of three or so years ago, he left that world behind and set up The Mortgage Pod. So I wanted to get into detail with Steve, understanding how he got into the industry, how he found the transition to estate agency mortgage services, how then the mortgage pod come about, and how he's grown that business as well in terms of taking on his first advisors and what the future looks like also for him and for his business. So yeah, let's just get Steve onto the podcast. So welcome onto the podcast, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Craig. Thanks very much for having me on today.
No, I appreciate you agreeing to come on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you a lot more, chatting about, obviously, we'll have a good chat about you and your business and how you got there and the rest of it. And I think it's always sort of good to have somebody that's gone through that transition from estate agency mortgage services, because of the people that listen to podcasts and my connections from the past and things like that. And I know it's sort of good to hear from you of your story from the estate agency mortgage service, shall we say, transition into the setting up yourself, running your bit, and sort of 3 years in. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having a chat. So first of all, before we get into it, just want to just do a brief introduction about yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. Yeah, thanks very much. So yeah, I've been a mortgage broker myself, circa 10 years now, 7 years of which was employed in an estate agency environment. And then 3 years ago, I founded the Mortgage Pod. Originally, it was just myself, and now we're in our third year, and our team is growing.
Excellent. And I think, like, so I do a bit of not too much research before in terms of it, but it's good to, like, say, obviously you are very proactive on LinkedIn and the rest of it. And it's good to have a look at your website and sort of see that about your team. And we'll have a chat about that in terms of growing your team and whether that was something that was always you wanted to do. But let's just take you back, first of all, from what you sort of said there. So was your first experience of mortgage broking in the sequence estate agency world, or was that another step?
Yeah, that was my first exposure, if you like, to the industry. It was my first role. I joined as a trainee just after getting CeMAP. So I took care of my own CeMAP qualifications. I felt that may present myself as a better opportunity, having come into the industry brand new. So decided to take CeMAP. I actually studied for my CeMAP exams on a beach in Thailand. I was on a 2-year around the world sabbatical with my now wife, and made the decision while traveling that the financial services and mortgages in particular was the direction I wanted to pursue. So I studied for CeMAP. There was a couple of examples where I had the choice between reading the next chapter or swimming with the turtles. I missed the turtles. I was focused. I was keen to join this industry, and arrived back in the UK, sat my exams and applied for opportunities, and fortunately Sequence were kind enough to give me an opportunity, and my first role in the industry.
Excellent. Well, what a decision to make. Hopefully it's turned out the right decision-ish, because kind of thing, because I'm guessing that you can go back to Thailand and do your swimming with the turtles and things like that. Now you've established your business, but I'm guessing the time you made that decision, it shows you how much how committed you were to getting into the industry. It's fair to say. So you are the first person I've ever spoken to who's done and studied CeMAP in Thailand. To be fair, Steve, I'll give you that.
That's great to hear.
So when taking you back to that time, and you've got your CeMAP in your hand, you've got your first role within estate agency mortgage services. Can you remember, like, the first month, the first few months? Was it what you expected, or totally different, or from a world of mortgages point of view and your employer as well?
The role and the work of a mortgage broker was completely different to expected. I was not prepared. I did not understand the insurance side of the business and how important protection advice to clients as well as mortgage advice would be, and how crucial that would be in the role. It's fair to say I joined the industry relatively blind, but quickly realised it was a good opportunity, quickly realised that it was work I enjoyed doing, and could see the future potential that this career can bring a new advisor.
Mm-hmm. I think that's it. Like I appreciate you being very honest at this point in terms straight into the podcast and getting to open up and be very honest, because I think that has to be, like, you've experienced it. I've sort of seen it so many times where mortgage, like, you get your CeMAP, you've chosen not to swim with the turtles, you've got your CeMAP in your hand, you then got your first day, the first month, the first few months into the branch and into the role, and it is nothing like the CeMAP world of everybody's a first time buyer. The training as well is everybody's a first time buyer 15%, and then all of a sudden clients aren't always bred that way, shall we say, and you've got to learn the role very quick. What was the sort of biggest thing that you learn at that early stage, would you say?
I'd say you touched on it there, actually, Craig. First time buyer, 10% deposit, straightforward circumstances, employed occupations, right? It's the stereotypical, if you will, of somebody obtaining a mortgage, but it was apparent that every individual circumstances was completely different. And that's now a huge part of the advice and the information that I share with clients, is that the information that might be available online or from friends or colleagues or someone that you meet in the pub at the weekend, everybody is different. Everybody's circumstances are different and are unique. And that is actually the primary responsibility of a mortgage broker, is to understand those circumstances. So joining the industry with a preconceived idea of somebody that wants a mortgage is actually very different to the reality of anybody can get a mortgage with their circumstances, and they are unique and different.
No, definitely. And I think that's it, like you say. And I said that because I know that's the most common feedback, is that I think that there is one, I'm not talking about issues at this early stage in the podcast, but I think that sort of, you have to be very adaptable very early on in your career as a mortgage broker, because you've read your CeMAP, you've gone through that, you've thought the CeMAP is the be all and end all. You then go through the generic training, which is people go through week in, week out on induction as getting into the role. And then the first thing you hit by is, well, I've got a CCJ, or I've got a default, or I've got 5%, or it's been gifted from a parent, or like you say, every single person is unique. And it is difficult to go through that training and CeMAP to help you with that. But I think it still has to have some realization in there that ain't your business. That's not your core business. Your core business is, I need, like you said there, that's the role of a mortgage broker. You've got a client situation which are not straightforward. It's about piecing it together to finding that solution for them and not panicking in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, I often refer to somebody's circumstances as a puzzle, and the different pieces of the jigsaw puzzle come together to find a solution. And a lot of the work that mortgage brokers in general do is understanding the detail and the detail of the lender policy as well, to try and fit all of the pieces together to be able to find a solution. There typically will be a solution for certainly the large majority of buyers, and that's the beauty of working with so many mortgage lenders now, is that there are lots of additional options that perhaps I wouldn't have been, or wouldn't have had access to in a former role. No two clients are the same. That's for sure.
Definitely not. And one thing that you sort of talked about there was, again, being honest about your sort of learning and transition, was about protection side of things. Because as a mortgage broker, I know more brokers that will refer it to somebody else, a protection specialist. I know some that will do it themselves. I know some that won't even talk about it with their clients. I'm always will be a believer that you're getting the clients into the debt. You need to give them a solution on how to get out of the debt should the worst situation be happening in their lives and their journey. So how did that, what were your thoughts in terms of, was it protection, what insurance was, I didn't know this was going to be part of the role, or you knew it was part of the role, and how fundamental part of the role is it to you as you've sort of been in the industry?
Yeah, I think turning the clock back 10 years, coming into the role of a mortgage advisor, I expected to be talking about mortgages on a day-to-day basis. It became apparent due to largely due to the training that was provided, but actually due to the conversations and the what ifs that do come up in conversation. It became apparent that protection is as important as the debt itself. I saw a post on Facebook recently that said, describe the work that you do very, very badly. And my answer to that question was, will I help people get into a lifelong debt? And that's essentially what we're doing. So it's as important that this debt's repaid and that we are advising clients on this side of the business as well. And I didn't expect that to be so important when joining the industry. So that was one of the very first points that I remember being surprised by.
I think I think everybody listening who's been in the estate agency, mortgage services world, the large corporates, be it Connell, Sequence, LSL, Country, whatever the case may be, protection is one of the things that is trained heavily on, shall we say, in terms of the importance of it, and rightly so. The things are, I won't always sort of say it is always part of the sales process, but I don't see protection, I've never seen it as a sales. It is about sort of the client's needs and understanding that, and giving and showing them that what can happen if the worst does happen, what can happen to them and this sort of bubble that you are creating for them with the roof over their head. So yeah, it's quite interesting to get your take on it, because like I say, I think that will be the take of most people's is, I just thought I was going to be a mortgage advisor, and it's not. It's about getting them the lifelong debt and that the monthly drain on their bank account, shall we say. It's just making sure that that's protected as well. So in terms of you being at Sequence and being employed and seeing through that particular time, was going self-employed, owning your own business, always part of the plan? Was that always something, or was that something that you grew into as you got more into the role?
It definitely wasn't part of the plan 10 years ago. Joining the industry, I was very grateful for an opportunity. Having no experience, I was grateful to be joining the financial services industry and the role of a mortgage broker. I understood that there would be future opportunities at that stage. I like to believe that I've always been ambitious. I've always put the effort in when required and worked hard. So I was always of the understanding that future opportunities would come. Could I have possibly envisioned the mortgage pod or my own business at that point? No. So my mindset and perhaps my ideas has certainly changed over the years. Most definitely.
What was it sort of in terms of, was there sort of like one moment where you thought, I want to do this myself? Was there one moment or one situation, or just was it something that grown, or can you identify that one time where you thought, do you know what, I'm going to do this for myself? Was there any trigger for that?
Yeah, I think for all of the negative that came with COVID and the pandemic and that period, for me personally, it was actually quite a positive time. COVID or lockdown, should we say, taught me that I was able to work remotely. Just prior to COVID, my previous role was a face-to-face mortgage broker. All of our appointments, all of our clients were all seen face-to-face. It was only until lockdown that we had to adapt to transition to working remotely. So the first thing that I learned was that I was able to do so, which meant that I could now service a much greater pool of clients. They didn't need to be in my physical office. I can help clients buy a new build house in Scotland, for example. I was no longer limited geographically. So that was the first takeaway from the COVID period. But also I felt like I was still able to put the effort in. There were still opportunities. I was still able to give a really good service to the clients that were available. And for one reason or another, I reached a point where it was time for me to move on. I felt like I might have peaked with my former employer. So that was a really good opportunity for me to try. It was also a good time for me personally as well. And I had my first son during the lockdown period. And after having a child, as any parent will agree, your perspective changes considerably. So off the back of coronavirus and becoming a parent, well, my priorities had changed. So not only did I, not only was I still ambitious, but I now had an opportunity to create a lifestyle around my family, or to be there for my wife or my children when they needed to be. So off the back of coronavirus, not only did I realize I was able to work remotely, but I now had an opportunity to work around my young family. The Mortgage Pod was born.
And what I think, like, it's sort of sometimes it is these things that situations, circumstances have been thrown in at you in terms of, obviously it was thrown at everybody with regards to COVID, but in terms of your personal situations and circumstances at that time, as well as a global pandemic, you've seen that as an opportunity to, whereas people at that time maybe were sort of retracting back, shall we say, in terms of what they were doing. You sort of seen that as an opportunity to go to create that lifestyle that you wanted. Was there any ever sort of like doubt in your mind in terms of what you were doing? You've got a young son, got a new family, you're leaving the security per se. I've talked about any time before about security of employment, but you're leaving that paycheck at the end of every single month and that wage slip at the end of the single month. You're leaving that behind to then. What was the sort of thoughts going through your mind in terms of, what were your emotions like?
Yeah, so I had a half an eye on this next step, if you will, or the potential to become independent. I had half an eye on it, but COVID probably came as the push or the nudge that I really needed. I was in a comfortable role. I had an excellent sales manager. I was enjoying the office that I was working in. I was in a what you could consider a good job. So I absolutely took the risk, and there was a gamble, and that was, of course, a huge part of the decision. But actually, again, COVID and becoming a parent really helped me to change my mindset and reevaluate on what was important for myself and for my family. And the risk, if you like, was actually overshadowed by the opportunity side of what was to come. So yes, it was difficult, and it was a long time making that decision. it's just mindset. That was all it was. I had a mindset change, and that was all I needed. I was ready.
I think, which is a great way to look at it. And funny enough, I went out, like I said before, I don't do much research before I hit record and obviously get you onto the podcast. I know we've been talking for quite some time. I think it must, like, in terms of trying to get you on the podcast and just chatting anyway, I think it's been quite a while. But when I look back at some of there's a post that sort of really, that sort of sprung out on me on it was on your LinkedIn profile, and it was a post 2 years ago, and it was about the year into your business. So it literally moves on nicely from, we've talked about you starting up and where you're at, but then you talked there about mindset, and these things that sort of that you talk about in that post, and it is from 2 years ago, that you put on LinkedIn, but it was a year in. It was a very open and honest post in terms of what you did. But then the thing is there that you talked about, which is the big thing for me, which you've said there, was about your I'm looking there because I'm reading it in there, but you talked about a year in, and the working less hours, spending more time with your family, having better conversations. But then my mental health has improved, which is obviously goes on to your map, like in terms of what you talked about there with regards to your mindset. So what, a year into the mortgage pod, what sort of, like, what was going through your mind? What were your thoughts in terms of, you talked about just surviving, but actually you didn't just survive, which is key. Like, this, the first year, the first couple of years, it is all about just surviving. But you talked there about how, very openly, about how a lot of things have changed, not only your work, but your life and your headspace and everything else.
Yeah, I'm happy to share my own personal experiences with anybody that I can help. I work and run a business and live pretty straightforward in the sense that post was a true reflection on how proud I was of what I'd achieved in my first 12 months. I survived the post. I remember it word for word, and I was ecstatic that 12 months into being an independent with no salary, that I was able to provide for my family, etc. But I was able to make it work, and absolutely, year one was very much about was about realization that the risk was worth it, and in a particular environment, employed sales targets and things, it can be very pressurizing. It can impact conversations with clients. It can impact the day-to-day of the work of a mortgage broker. If you're under what now seems to have been unnecessary pressure, it can absolutely have an impact on mental health and personal situations. So for me, not only was the I survived post realization that I'd done enough business to warrant not having a salary or an employer, but actually I took a risk and it paid off, and I've been rewarded with a better life. I've been rewarded with a better quality of life now that will mean I can spend more time with my child and my family, and the bills are still getting paid. So that was a true reflection of how I was feeling at that time. Very, very happy after 12 months.
How did you sort of find that first? One of the toughest things that people have to deal with is that transition from, particularly for you, because obviously you was 5-6 years in the corporate world of morning meetings, what are you going to do this week, all the micromanagement and all the rest of it, of being told where to go, what time, and things like that. What people struggle with is that transition from being employed, hours of work are set, place of work is generally set, but then to go from to full freedom, and you can choose where you work, when you work, and the good distractions of a young family. How was that transition?
Yeah, cool. It was it was it was enjoyable. It was great. It was really, really nice, really, really good. And I remember a day where it was my mum's birthday. We arranged a trip to Thorpe Park for a Tuesday with 3 days' notice, and that was okay. That was okay. So yeah, it felt great. Don't get me wrong. I was certainly under new pressures, and I certainly had challenges. The first question that anybody is going to ask is lead source, or where are your customers going to come from? That is very difficult, and that is probably the largest reason that people don't make the jump, or an advisor doesn't explore their opportunities. So again, just linking back to the end of the 12-month period, the fact that I had generated enough recommendations, or that I had enough friends, family members, or people that were willing to recommend me, or even better, trust me to arrange their mortgage, that was even more reassurance that I was able to make this work. So that felt brilliant.
I think that it's quite interesting you were talking before, and to get your take on it really, with regards to, you didn't talk about income, you didn't talk about banking's issue, business, whatever you want to call it. You talked about the work-life balance. You talked about the experiences that you've had and the things you've been able to do. The income's been like, is there. Obviously, it's always a worry, and it's always something that's there in the back of the mind. But you very much focused on. You didn't talk about the income. You talked about being able to do the things that you wanted to do, and creating this lifestyle that you've been able to create for yourself in that sort of short period of time. And that, to me, means that you have actually understood what sort of why you went self-employed in the first place. And some people, it is all about income, and that's all. And the earning potential, and they want to work more hours than they did in the corporate world, and think that is fine for them. But from what you're saying, you feel as though you've got that balance right, of the work-life balance is right for you, and it is right for you in terms of you are generating income, lead source, and the rest of it. But at the same time, you're able to do the things that are very important right now. You missed out on the turtle swimming, so that was your choice. But then you've got the benefit now of sort of spending more time with your son and seeing him grow up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the income side of things is important for sure. But I've always been of the mindset that if you do a good job for somebody, you'll be paid accordingly. And I've always focused on the customer journey, the customer experience, the customer outcome, and doing the right thing. It is the basics that our industry is built upon, but just do it, right? And to anybody that's perhaps considering, or is close to making a shift, do the very best that you can for every opportunity that you get, and it will work out. It's quite easy to perhaps be short-sighted, or to lose vision of what could be if you just continue organically. And I was of the mindset to continue to give a good service, and people will recommend those services, and unfortunately they have.
And is that always, have you always been that way, even in the corporate world, Steve, in terms of it's about this, it's about delivering the service, it's about delivering the service. The income will come, the money will come, it will happen if I deliver the right outcome for the client and the right service client. Is that always been, is that just like part of the core part of your core values, shall we say? Or
Yes, absolutely. It's the most basic of principle for me of doing the work or working as a mortgage broker. Offer a good service. That's the crux of it. I've been in an environment where perhaps the customer outcome is perhaps the second priority to perhaps a company outcome or profit or revenue or income or whatever, and it's just not the way to give mortgage advice. So yes, that's been my, even in prior roles prior to the financial services industry, good customer service, people will come back, people will tell their friends. So yeah, that is my core principle. Maybe I've never defined that as my core principle, but it is certainly how every element of the work I do, and now the Mortgage Pod as a business and our team, yes, that's who we are. That's absolutely who we are.
And I think that leads on nice, because I was going to talk to you that we've talked about the past and where you are, like setting up the firm and that the first few years, and then I wanted to talk about then now moving on to your growth and moving forward. But I want to acknowledge like something you said there, because I would just make a note of it, that if you understand what your principles are, your values are, and things, you build a business around those values. So you're more likely to attract the individual to your business, not from a client point of view, but somebody who you want to work with, another advisor or administrator or protection specialist or whatever the case may be. You're more likely to attract the individual that you want to be part of your business, because you have your values, you have your principles. And I think that's just then it's easier to attract the right person that enhances that even further, because they want to be in that kind of environment. So it's funny if you touched on that there, because that's something I wanted to talk about, but we'll go on to that in a sec. So because obviously you have grown, you've got advisors, you've got people in the business. What was that always part of the plan in terms of growth? Is that what you wanted to do, or did you fall into that as well, or what was the plan around growing the Mortgage Pod?
Yeah, okay, great. So step one was a route to market. I wanted to be able to trade independently. I required a limited company for tax and income purposes. So the Mortgage Pod was born. After year one, after survival, if you like, it gave me an opportunity to reflect on the previous 12 months and have more of a plan or more of a vision for time to come, for the future. Our team grew actually within the first year. Ebony joined us within year one. Ebony's our office support manager, and that helped us to really focus on what was important, the customer service, the customer experience side of things. Everything that we've done up to this point, I'd say, has been organic. We're not looking to be the biggest mortgage broker. We unfortunately can't help every single client. If we are a good fit to work with a client, if we can help them, they will be very well looked after by our whole team throughout the entire process, throughout the entire home buying journey. If we're not a fit to work together, then we will wish them luck, and there probably is somebody that's better placed to help that particular client. And this was one of the main mindset changes for me, is that to be successful in business, you do not need to work with everybody. You need to work with the right people that support you and want to work with you. So the post of mine that you mentioned actually on LinkedIn, I no longer needed to phone people if they didn't want to speak to me. No hard feelings, no problem at all. If you've got a good mortgage broker that's representing your interests well, fantastic. I'm pleased for you. If you don't, I'm happy to have a conversation.
Is that because, and that's to me demonstrates that you are secure in terms of who you are as a person. You're secure in terms of your business, and you're not having to chase every single opportunity. It's about working, like you said, with the right people. But you is that because that's how you think, and or how you've always been as well? Because that's quite an interesting concept, and not everybody's that kind of way, because the people do feel like they have to chase everything. But that to me sort of says that you quite know who you are as a person, you know who you are as a business, and you're secure in terms of what you do, and you're confident in what you do without that egotism, and without that sort of fear of rejection.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it's a business, and ultimately it's there to provide an income for everybody involved. Yes, that's our it's our objective, but we won't ever lose sight of doing things correctly, doing things the right way, and providing the very best service that we're able to provide. That's a core principle of ours, and I am confident that there will be customers that have had a great experience that will tell friends, colleagues, family members, and I'm confident enough that we will receive inquiries.
Uh, I think that's it. Like, you just, for me, I understand where you're at as a business and where you're at as an individual, with which is all about the service for the client and building your business organically. What, with regards to the team, was that, how were you recruit? Were they just people that, like, obviously you started with Ebony very, very early on? I didn't realize it was that sort of early, but then with, obviously you've got Barry. I'm looking at your website. Barry, who's a mortgage and protection advisor. You've got Chris, who's then obviously Roger, the cockapoo, is by far the most important thing in the business. Absolutely, without a shadow of doubt. I understand that. But are these the people? Not talking about Roger, but people that, is it just somebody that you've been naturally drawn to? Has it been a relationship, sort of friendship, or anything like that that's led to these people coming into your business? It doesn't sound like you've been sort of, I'm on a recruitment drive and I'm trying to find another mortgage advisor. It's just, it seems a bit more organic than that. So just talk me through that in terms of what we're thinking, how that came about, and how the individuals came about into your business.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So Ebony joined our business from a corporate estate agency. Ebony has a lot of industry experience from a buying or selling a property point of view, what's involved, the kind of challenges or the stresses that clients are going to have. So Ebony's experience from a customer service and an estate agency point of view was incredible for us. That added so much more to our service delivery. So that was organic. We put a post out. We wouldn't have taken somebody on if they were not the right person for the business. And Barry, that's joined us fairly recently. Barry is an exceptional mortgage broker. He's been in the financial services industry 15 years, and he is very, very good. And we are incredibly lucky that Barry's now offering his mortgage advice within the mortgage pod. We've got a fantastic opportunity to work together to keep Barry busy, but our clients will be very well looked after if Barry's taken that client on board. We also have Chris. Chris is our protection advisor, very, very good as well, very experienced in the industry. I made a decision personally to focus on mortgage advice. I think as an independent in this industry, there are lots of options for a client. We've got access to 90 plus mortgage lenders now. That's a lot of knowledge. So my own personal opinion is that to give the client the best advice or the best experience or the best outcome, my opinion is that they should have a mortgage broker that specializes in mortgages, and they should have a protection broker that specialises in protection. There's lots of different protection providers, just like mortgages. They all cover different things. So for me, that was the right mortgages. Chris would focus on protection, and that was prior to Barry joining the firm.
And that the thing is, with that, Steve, is that you're not like, obviously in your past it would have been totally different. But in the corporate world, you're told that you've got, this is what you're doing and this is how you're doing it. Where you now, because you have your own business, you can make the decisions that are right for the right client outcome for your business, but more importantly for the client outcome, which is clear to see. So no, that's good. In terms of, we've covered the past, present, and like looking at like how you've, like from a recruitment point of view, is what does the future look like for the Mortgage Pod? What does the future look like for Steve? Is any goals or any thoughts out there in terms of where you're going with this?
So now is a really exciting time, both personally and for the Mortgage Pod. We are looking to grow. We have increased capacity. We've now got 2 full-time mortgage advisors, myself and Barry, that are looking to work with clients that want support and want some help. Respectfully, there are some customers out there that have it figured out, and that's fantastic, and we wish them well. Where we will really add value to a customer's experience is getting involved, and we'll guide a client through the whole process. Yes, that starts with the mortgage and the agreement in principle, but having worked in the industry for so long, I understand and recognise that some of our clients' challenges may not be directly related to the mortgage. There are challenges and obstacles and hurdles to overcome throughout the legal process or throughout the offering on a property process. Estate agents, the seller, the vendor, there's so many parties involved that we want to work with clients that are looking for holistic support. And we are looking to grow the business over the next 12 months. We're utilising better technology. We're utilising better systems and processes to be able to improve our offering to a client even greater. That will always be the heart of our business, is how can we improve the client's journey. And we've been able to increase our capacity. So moving forward, we are focused on growth. Joining the podcast with yourself today, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's time to spread our brand a little bit further.
No, and it's a good way to end, to be fair, Stephen. And that, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, being real sort of open and honest about your whole journey and experience so far. It's been great to talk for the last sort of 45 minutes and just sort of listen to you and about your principles and looking at what you learn, and like I said, giving an honest opinion and looking forward to the future as well. And I'm sure like there'll be brokers out there who are looking to join a firm that has someday leading from the front, that is sort of got the right values, the right principles, and building a business on the back of that. So I'll make sure that in terms of connecting with you and reaching out to you, we'll make sure that you get all the necessary platforms will be tagged in, so then people can reach out to you if they wanted to chat further. So, but Steve, thank you very much for your time. Thanks for agreeing to come on the podcast, and we finally get you on the podcast. What people won't see, which will be edited out, we had a bit of a technical issue right at the beginning and made you sweat a little bit right at the early start on the first podcast, but great background, and we've got the background in there as well, which looks great for the podcast. So, but thank you so much for your time, Steve. It's been great to talk to you.
Thank you, Craig. Really, really appreciate your time. Thank you for inviting me on.
Thanks for that, Steve. Thanks for being a great guest on the Mortgage Broker Broadcast. Really appreciate how honest Steve was on the podcast. To say, I think this probably was the first podcast that he's been on, and it was great to get his honest opinion on the industry, his transition into being a broker, then his transition from a large corporate into running his own business, and what the future looks like for the Mortgage Pod. So thanks for being a great guest, Steve. Really appreciate it. If you're considering becoming a self-employed mortgage broker, or looking to start your own mortgage broker brand and business, or you're looking to accelerate your existing business, then please see my website, craigskelton.co.uk, and look at how I can help you to achieve what you're wanting to achieve and achieve that next step for you and for your business. Thanks for listening. Any thoughts, feedback on the podcast, any guests you want on or anything like that, then please leave them whichever platform you listen to or watch the podcast on. Thanks very much. Have an amazing day. And as always, don't forget to run your own race.